Hi there, welcome back to Apatros Review. In this episode, American Tigers, directed by David Worth in the year 1996. Hi there, welcome back to Apatros Review, your guide to the wild world of science fiction action horror cinema with me, your host, Mila Sipka. If you want to spell my name, just look at the channel name. Now in this episode, we're doing the third and last of my Gun for Hire trilogy for this year. The fourth film that I have in this collection for Gun for Hire, Broken Bars, will be doing sometime next year. Now, this film it's a direct-to-video film, and it came out in 1996 in the US. I don't have an exact date when it came out, but yeah, sometime around then. And it was one of those films like Gunfire, which was a studio that came out in the mid-90s, putting out direct-to-video martial arts themed action films and thrillers. And you probably wouldn't have heard of them. Anyway, this third and last Gun for Hire film that I'm doing for this year, like I mentioned, Broken Bars is scheduled sometime in 2022 at the earliest. This El Cheapo knockoff of the likes of the classic World War II Lee Marvin actioner The Dirty Dozen has Sam J. Jones, the 1980s Flash Gordon, playing the commander of a military stockade who recruits 7 inmates from the US military's version of death row, and by the way, you even see a execution progress very early on in the film, to earn a chance of a reprieve and even redemption by forming an ersatz commando unit to crash and destroy a terrorist summit being conducted in an old cargo ship by a former US military colonel turned terrorist commander. Now, to be perfectly honest, I wasn't expecting very much from this film. Now, my pre-viewing research on the film, I did a lot of research on this one, and the few reviews I found on the internet and on YouTube were pretty much all negative. Everyone was saying it was an awful film. There were very few that were positive. And that didn't give me much hope. But upon actually watching the film, I found American Tigers wasn't that bad, if you take it on a certain level. At the very least, not a candidate for the D spectrum. Just an average movie that opts to go for a more character-driven drama than a straightforward military actioner. Now, the story is pure Death Row Strike Force thematics, created by the Dirty Dozen, although it would be fair to call this the Dirty Baker's Half Dozen, given it consists of 7 prisoners, one of whom, the only one who should not be redeemed, gets wasted after making the boneheaded decision to steal a knife and try to kill his commanding officer, only to get the knife turned on him. Wanker. By the way, for those who don't know, Baker's Dozen is a term that was coined in the Dark Ages, when bakers would include an extra slice in their loaves of bread as insurance, to avoid being punished for selling underweight loaves, and consists of 13 slices instead of 12. So in this way, Baker's Half Dozen means 7. And by the way, those punishments in the Dark Ages for bakers to sell underweight loaves of bread, oof, not pretty. Now, these 7 prisoners, or it ultimately ends up to be 6, all pulled from military death row to volunteer, even for one of them thinks it's bullshit, to form an ersatz military unit to take on a terrorist summit, a mission that not all will survive. Now, director David Worth, responsible for a few classic B-actions in his day, makes this an exercise in redemption of the condemned, and as such modestly transcends the El Cheapo nature of the production to become a reasonable B-actioner. Although reasonable is kind of in the eyes of the beholder a little bit there. It is never going to be mistaken for any sort of unrecognized classic or even a gem in the rough, at least judging by the internet reviews on this film, but at least it delivers on the story side of things. I mean, you follow the story pretty decently. Even though they pretty much try to shoehorn as much hand-to-hand as they can. It doesn't always work, but at least they tried. And the scene where female martial arts legend Cynthia Rothrock makes a cameo as herself to take on the surviving 6 prisoners in hand-to-hand and utterly mops the floor with their sorry asses in order to train them, is just about the worth of the $2 that you're going to spend to buy the DVD. The film was released on Region 4 DVD by Flashback Entertainment, but copies of this particular film are hard to come by. It was actually released twice. Not that flash for B-action, but for an action-drama hybrid practically running on paint fumes, and the badly rendered CGI explosion, throwing planks of wood from an entirely metal ship. You see that explosion is pretty funny. This won't hurt your eyes to watch, but you have to kind of accept it on a certain level. I mean, most people are going to think this is a bad film, but if you give the film a chance, it kind of makes its case a bit. And the prisoners who do get redeemed, well, they get redeemed. Like I said, it's basically the Dirty Baker's Half Dozen. It's like halfway version of the Dirty Dozen, that classic Lee Marvin film. Now, American Tigers raids a terrorist hideout and kicks ass at Sea, 4 out of 10, strictly average. Now for gore, there's no gore, but the bullet squibs look convincing enough. As for nudity, there's 10 pairs of boobs seen during the strip club and wet t-shirt contest scenes. Okay, so that's it for American Tigers. And by the way, the DVD that comes of this film, there's no extras or anything like that. It's a cheap DVD, so if you can find it. Okay, that ends my gun for hire triple. And so the American Tigers gets a C, average. Now I don't do requests, but if you want to know if a particular film in my collection, or if you have a certain type of like action or science fiction or horror film you want me to check out, a certain theme, then hit me up in the questions and I'll answer them. Okay, I hope you guys are staying safe. Yeah, it looks like this coronavirus pandemic is going to last for most of this year. I'm going to do a Coronaween too when the time comes eventually. Okay, I hope you guys are staying safe. Take it easy, and that's it for this review.